Good evening, punters, and welcome once again to the Tripod, where we break down every NRL game every week from a betting perspective. Today, we've only got 3 more NRL games left for the season. Today, we'll be going through a couple of games in the preliminary finals. Rough week on the NFL, but we don't need to talk about that too much in this week. But what I will talk about at the start, Jacob, is our side bets, mate. What is going on? You lost over $1,000 to me last week after starting the season on an absolute tear. Like, are you sick? Are you feeling ill, or is there something going on there?
Feel like pure shit and just want to win a side bet, mate. I should just to clarify what you said. Rough week in the NFL. I mean, yet another winning week. We actually went 3-1 on our best bets for like 74%. We won 16-1 same game multi a week ago, and then this week had 2 different multis, 16-1, 14-1 that could not have been any more locks to go home and then to come home and then fall short. And you guys might have seen some of our posts about that. So that's always hard to pick yourself up, and I've got to pick myself up off the canvas because you have been fleecing me with these side bets for sure, and we discussed that a lot on the recap. That I can barely afford to even be on the pod anymore. But some people don't watch our recap; they just watch the preview. So as people know, we had our biggest side bet of the year, and you took the points with the Raiders. They won outright. You also won a double unit bet on a Raiders straight up upset. I had the Roosters, and then I went for the upset with the Eels against the Bunnies, and that didn't work out for me either. So you're doing very well with that, but I still enjoy the side bets, I say reluctantly. We were talking about that because people might think every time someone wins a side bet, if only the other pod member had been on the correct side, you guys would have given it as a best bet. But there is a difference. For one, when we bet each other, pretty much it's a $2 odds. Now, I will bet something with 51% confidence if I get $2 odds because I trust, in the long run, I'll win a little more than I lose, and I love to have a bet as you do. Whereas for it to be a best bet, we've got to have 60% confidence. So there is a difference between a side bet and a best bet. And also, if we did side bets for a whole season, or as we have, neither of us is going to win more than 62% of the time. No. So overall, what people I hope can appreciate is the side bets are cancelling out, and you're definitely ahead in the ledger. But neither of us are going to be on 65% winners, where we are on 62% for the year. So I think our system is working really well.
Yeah, it is. And like you said, there's some accountability there. And also, we put hours into, research and that kind of thing before the pod. So if we like a side, we've done the work to it. And it's never going to be, I'm never going to win money, let's say it that way, if I go against a strong opinion that you have. Whereas if we, both have strong opinions either way, far better to do a side bet than to waste the followers' money on, 50 to 55% plays at the best. Let's start off, Jacob. Friday night, the Storm hosting the Raiders. The Storm are 6-point favourites. The total sitting at 44.5. And obviously, when I say hosting, once again, they'll be playing at Suncorp Stadium. I will be there for that one. So, take what you will from that. But generally, whenever I go to Suncorp and I have a bet on, it always loses. So, this one, Munster named. Don't know how surprised you are with that, Jacob. I know when it first came out, the knee injury, it seemed like he was going to miss this one. So, but he's been named, so seems like he's going to play at this point. I would have my reservations about whether he's going to be 100%. Obviously, this is a huge game. They'd want him back, and it's not one of those games where I'd think if he's not 100%, they'll just let it slide. So I think he's going to play in this one, but he's not quite going to be tip-top shape, I would say. In terms of the Raiders, they're pretty much trotting out the same as last week. Like I said on last week's pod, it was a brutal game against the Roosters. People were cramping up at the end of that one. Obviously, it's the Friday game this week, but it was the Friday game last week as well, so you get a full week of recovery. Plus, like I mentioned, I think you've mentioned it as well, Jacob, Raiders got their bye in week 20, so that those players aren't as fatigued as they probably should be. So one other thing to note is that this would be the second straight week of travel for this Raiders side, which they didn't have to do for quite some time. But once again, I think that sort of nullifies a little bit from the week 20 bye that they gave their starting players. So I think the spot actually, despite the Storm being at home, well, not a technical home game, but, without the travel, I think I would probably lean to the Raiders in this one, but you sort of see it the other way, Jacob.
Yeah, and I think you can call Suncorp Stadium home advantage for one. And I don't know if you guys have heard the stats on that, but in the last decade, Storm 15 of 16 at Suncorp, which is pretty hectic. One loss in 10 years. Raiders, on 11-game losing streak at Suncorp. Last win 2010. Now, read into that what you will. I mean, most of those games obviously be against the Broncos, and the Storm have been a lot more dominant consistently over the last 10 years than the Raiders have. But Ricky, regardless, will instill like a siege mentality into his team. They made the grand final last year and they could have won, and yet nobody's picked him this year. So he's, going to be really challenging his players to get their respect, and they just knocked out the champ. So, I, for one, I bet against them last week, so I guess you can say I disrespected Ricky's men last week. I paid the price. I'm going to be disrespecting them again this week. And look, let's break it down like we do with the huge matches. Let's look at the different units and see where we can find an edge. And I'll kick it off with the forwards. When I look at a game, I always look at the forwards first. And I will just say, it's super even to me. You got Josh Papali, best prop in the world. You got Johnny Bateman is absolute class. And I think Tapane is now world-class lock as well. Soliola, Whitehead, they don't let you down. Extremely solid, experienced players. But Storm has answers for that. You've got Jesse Bromwich and Christian Welsh in the props, international and origin prop there. Kaufusi plays for Kangaroos and origin back rower. Kenny Bromwich, I think, haven't heard a lot. Obviously, a Kiwi international. I think he's had a career year this year. And then at lock, this is the other big question mark. It's either Big Nelson or it's Dale Finucane. So correct. I think either way, that's extremely strong for the Storm. Now, I think with Dale Finucane, he's been named in the reserves. He's trying to overcome a calf injury. I don't think it makes a big difference to the Storm starting pack, but the big difference it makes if Finucane plays is how much stronger their bench becomes, because either he moves to the bench or you have Big Nelson on the bench. In saying all that, hard to split the forwards. I give the edge to the Storm. Maybe I'm cheating here, but I'm just going to give the edge on freshness factor because they didn't play in round 20. Then they got the bye. They haven't had to travel. And when it's really even, I think like that tiny little bit more energy could get them home in this one. How do you see the forward battle?
I don't disagree. I had exactly the same thing written down on paper. They look fairly similar. Or I'll probably give the edge to the Storm on paper when you just look at the names there. But you're right. Like Papali's gone up a level in the later stages of the season. Tapane obviously was another beast last week, and you mentioned Bateman. They've got some ball playing, guys in this forward pack, that's for sure. So just on rest alone, I had the exact same thing. I had the Storm as the slightly better forward pack. So, and then I sort of looked at the halves, because obviously that's the next thing you have to look at. And to be honest with you, I'd probably give the edge to the Raiders here. I know you're going to disagree with me, but you've got Whiten and George Williams who've been playing probably their best footy of the entire season. And I know they had some disruptions throughout the season. Now they've had the same core together for a little while. They're hitting the line better than they ever have, and I think that's been a definite change from the first half of the season, because when the season started, we thought, these bring in George Williams, and we know Whiten loves to hit the line and find some holes there, and that's kind of like, you're always, as a defense, uncertain about whether they're going to pass it or actually just hit the defense. And they weren't doing that first half of the season. They've made a conscious effort for these two halves to hit the line better, and it's been working for them. And look, if Munster was fully healthy, maybe I probably would say that the Storm have the better halves in this one, but I just have my reservations about it. I don't think he's going to be 100%, so I actually would give the slight edge to the Raiders halves in this one, on form as well alone.
It's funny, I was thinking about how we said, fullback's the most important position in the competition, but the best fullbacks in the world, I mean, Tedesco, Trebojevic was hurt this year, RTS, Kalen Ponga, they're not still playing. None of those teams are playing. I actually think the most important players in the competition are the halves again, and a running half. The highest level of footy you can play is when you got a half that can challenge the line. And the spine, I didn't break it down by halves necessarily, but the spine. Sure. Which spine I give the edge hinges on the fitness of Munster, which itself is a gamble. There's obviously like three scenarios. There's he's 100% fit. There's he plays, but he's clearly hampered slightly. Right. Or there's he's out completely. And all those three are possible, and we're not going to know. I mean, unless before game time if he gets scratched. If I had to guess, I'm going to say he plays, they strap it up, and he's less than 100% effective. And I can't disagree. I think Raiders have the better halves, the 6 and 7. I love the way that Williams is integrated in the team, and you can't say enough about Jack White, and he's a superstar. Fullbacks is very touch and go. I know you love CNK.
I do.
They're both great fullbacks. They're both exciting players. I couldn't split them. But I have to give the edge to the Storm spine because, of course, you have the GOAT in at 9 there, and that's the biggest edge of all. Then I move to the outside backs, and I don't see a big edge to either team here either, and I don't really see how the outside backs is going to win this game other than maybe defensively. I look at the Raiders. I see a superstar in Nick Kotrick. I think he's the strike weapon for the Raiders. When you look at the Storm back line, I can't help but feel the development of just Olam this year has been so big. He went from start of the year, he's a question mark, and can he make the right decisions in defence, to now he's one of the most damaging outside backs in the game. Once again, I think I have to give a tiny edge to the Storm for freshness. Now, Sully Vunivalu has dealt with hammy issues. The rest is going to help him. Adokar can kill you in one moment. You got Sammy Valame is the most inexperienced of all the outside backs, and you got Rapana coming in with the sternum question mark, and I'm sure he'll still play. He's tough as nails. But again, I don't see it as a match deciding, but I give a slight edge outside backs to the Storm. What about you?
I had the same thing. I gave a slight edge to the outside backs for the Storm, but not just because just on paper, obviously, like you said, Kotrick's an absolute monster, like Adokar's a monster, but yeah, freshness and just the fact that, like, looking at that Raiders team last week, you could see some of those guys, struggling a little bit towards the end of the game, and that's why I wouldn't normally. I love CNK, and I would have given, not a hefty edge, but a sizable edge to CNK over Puppy, but just because he was, cramping up a little bit at the end of that game, I think that game did wear on them. Now, I mentioned, you do get a full week, so yes, I do give the Storm definitely an edge for freshness, but honestly, this game, you're catching a converted try here. I know that it's not a true home field. You mentioned all of those trends, Jacob, and maybe there is something to that, maybe there isn't, but I just really think that the Raiders, they've just been building nicely here, and obviously the Storm are awesome, but the Raiders, they've been building nicely. They're playing their best footy at the right time of the season, and I can honestly, despite the weather being perfect or meant to be on that Friday night, I can see this one just getting into the grindhouse, and any time that I think a game is going to be like that, I have to lean towards the dog.
And at the start of this, you said the total's 44.5. Now, was that
Sorry,
correct at the time that you put it, or was that a typo?
I'm trying to
because
think.
When
no,
we looked,
I think
it was 42.5.
I think it was a typo. I'm trying to think.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
think it
doubt
was
that it would have been as
42
high as 44, so I don't want people to get their knickers in and not saying it's not 44. In any case,
You're right.
I'm with you that I lean to the style of play from both these sides being an unders trend game, and that would definitely be the way I would look. As you guys know, our one and only best bet last week was a winner, and it was on Raiders Roosters under. We aren't going to pull the trigger on that as much as we want to find you guys a best bet, just because we have to still accept the new age of a new NRL, new era NRL, and that's historically high scoring. That is more fatigue in the game. That is, advantage to the attacking sides. And there's obviously a lot to respect in the, attack of both these sides. Now, if Munster ends up getting scratched, again, that leans you even further to the under. But you just have to be so brave. We took unders last week. It was the only finals game that's gone under. We don't have 60% confidence in that. Why do I still have the confidence to lay the 6 with the Storm? I also give a tiny edge to the Storm's bench. Whether Finucane is in the team, it's obviously even stronger, as I mentioned, because it could push Nelson to the bench, and it's so fierce. But I think Brandon Smith and Tinu Fasumalawe are superstar players that could start for nearly any other club. They're on the bench for the Storm. But I mean, I still respect what the Raiders bring off the pine as well. But I do give it.
You love Harawira Naira.
I know I do, but he hasn't been quite. He hasn't had the same speed or spring in his step this year. They've kind of converted him to a middle. Still a good player. It's not that I don't think the Raiders can win, but I just think Bellamy is an edge as well. He's the mastermind, and while Ricky is the greatest motivator, I don't see the Storm lacking any motivation whatsoever. I think they've got their own camp mentality that they've had to move, relocate their lives, and they're in it together, but they know they can achieve the highest, the pinnacle of the game this season. Now, we saw a revenge factor last week where the Raiders upset the Roosters, and that is not going to make up for the 2019 grand final. But hey, they kind of put those demons to bed, so to speak. That's a great revenge. What about last year?
Yeah.
The Raiders beat the Storm twice, and they're both very memorable. They were both in Melbourne, and they were both comebacks. One was a regular season game where the Raiders won from 18-0 down. The Storm don't forget that easily. The other was first week of the finals, a comeback win where they scored a try with about 6 minutes to go to win. Now, if the Raiders don't beat the Storm,
left on the clock.
Yeah. And if the Raiders don't beat the Storm there, the Storm gets a week off. They get a bye. They avoid the Roosters. They make a grand final last year. So I think this week the Storm gets their revenge for 2019 against the Raiders. I think freshness is a factor. The sharper side, the forward pack ultimately gives me enough edge and enough confidence. If Munster's scratched or underperforms, it definitely brings the game closer together. And I've got a lot of respect in the Raiders, but I'm taking you on in any case. I just think the Storm should be too good.
And therefore, we do have a $500 side bet. We've upped the ante in this final series. Jacob's taking the Storm, laying the 6. I'm going the other way on that. Let us know in the comments who you would be siding with for that one. On one hand, you could say that I'm sort of on a winning streak here, but on the other hand, that you could say that Jacob is most certainly due to get me back this week. Let's move on to the Saturday game. It's the Panthers hosting the Rabbits. The Panthers are laying 6 points, and the total for this one is 45.5. Very high totals, to be honest, Jacob. For finals games, generally, we've seen in years past, these, finals games like this, you'll see the totals almost always under that 40 mark. But like you mentioned, with those new rules, it certainly has changed the totals for the season. And let's start in this one by stating the obvious. This isn't a home game for the Panthers here. This is actually technically a home game for the Rabbits playing at ANZ Stadium, which is a little bit, the Panthers get a little bit screwed here, but we always knew that they would only get to play week 1 at Panthers Stadium. So look, I think you can throw home field out the window for this one. If anything, I'd give a slight bump to the Rabbits just for familiarity with the stadium and all that kind of stuff, having played there pretty much all season long. And one thing I wanted to mention with these two teams in particular, because I think it is important, and I think that you find that teams that do well every year towards finals time, it's continuity. I've mentioned all season long, the Panthers team has been so good because they've kept their core together pretty much as soon as Cleary came back from that first 2 week suspension. They've kept the team together, and they've just been building and building, and that's what gets you better and gets you peaking at finals time. Now, that's the same here. They're going to be good in this one. They've had the week off to freshen up. The only guy they miss, obviously, and that's the big one, is Kickout suspended for this one. So that hurts their left side attack for sure. Now, in terms of continuity for the Rabbits, now, they've had all sorts of shit, all sorts of injuries going on through the first half of the season. But look, I think since Latrell got injured, they've had that same core together, and they've gotten better every single week. And they've just killed teams recently. And I know we'll make the argument the Panthers have the bye week. They will be the fresher team, and they probably will be. But let me make the argument for the Rabbits here that they won't actually be too fatigued. Firstly, they've killed some teams over the last few weeks. That Rabbits game, they absolutely crushed them. They had to come from behind last week, but that wasn't too much of a brutal game. But just look at the schedule. They have not left Sydney since round 14. That is a long, long time to be chilling in Sydney playing either at ANZ or Bank West. Now they get to play at ANZ Stadium again. I think they're not going to be too fatigued for this one. It just seems like they are brimming with confidence. I think they can totally take it to this Panthers team, even though I truly believe this is by far the best defense they've faced over the last month.
So we disagree again, because I will be on Penrith and you're starting to make a strong case for Souths, and I don't really disagree with their freshness. I think that's a really good pickup. I could question, are the Bunnies overrated? Because I think they've played some soft teams, or they've played teams that should have been better but were bad on the day. Like Roosters round 20, Knights were bad round 1 of the finals, and Eels just fell apart a little bit. By the same token, the Bunnies have scored 150 points nearly in the last 3 weeks, and 2 of them were elimination finals. You have to just give them a huge amount of respect. I'll address what you said about home field. I don't think you can say it's an advantage to Souths because, and I could be wrong, someone can comment if they know, but surely with the limited attendances, ticket availability has to be first preference to the Panthers since it is their home game. Therefore, I think they will have the crowd. Any Panthers fan will kill to get a ticket to this game. So I think when you see the stands are full of Panthers fans, there will be an edge there. I just want to step back and say what an achievement by the Rabbitohs. This is their 3rd prelim in a row, last 3 years. And you've lost, how many clubs can lose, the best outside back of a generation in GI and the best forward of a generation in Sam Burgess in back-to-back years, still make prelims? Also,
people
2 years
were
ago,
shitting on them pre-season.
At the end of 2018, Anthony Seibold won Coach of the Year. And the Broncos had no doubt, at that point in time, he was a better coach than Bennett. And they pushed Bennett out the door, and they couldn't wait to get Seibold up there. And isn't it crazy that was 2 years ago, people thought Seibold was a better coach than Bennett? Is anybody doing more with less than what Wayne Bennett is doing right now? And he's done an incredible job. Of course, as you say, it's rest versus rust. Now, I don't think that Bunnies will be out of juice by any means. I also think Penrith, it's worth noting, of all the big sides like Roosters, Raiders, Storm, Penrith never rested a healthy player this year. They played everybody. They rode that wave. 16 straight wins now?
Yeah, I think the only time they rested 3 people in round 19 and 20, didn't they?
But even then it was Kickow and Coruscant carrying niggles. But they could have easily rested everyone in round 20, for example. They had the minor prem sewn up. They chose not to, and then they got that rest now. So the fact is, regardless of the injury report, every team has got bumps, bruises, and niggles, and it can he help? But one other point, Wayne Bennett, I said this in the recap, he actually said that they consciously did not flog their players in the COVID break. They weren't concerned about being the fittest team in round 3 when the season resumed. He said you can't be up for 20 straight weeks. He has built his team to peak now, and they absolutely are, and they're killing it. Do you want to look at the forward battle? You mentioned it, Kickow is obviously out.
We can look at the forward battle in a second. I just want to say one quick point. You mentioned that the Panthers obviously rested for this one, and look, to be honest, it's probably a bonus. Generally, having the week off, you get a little, half point to a point bump. I'm going to make the argument that not 100%, but there's a chance here. There's definitely a chance that this bye week could be the worst thing to happen to this Raiders team that's just been on a roll on a 15-game win streak. Like you said, haven't been resting players, been playing week in and week out. I'm not saying this is for sure, but wouldn't you say there's a slight chance that when a team's just on a roll, you kind of don't want that bye week sometimes. You just want to keep rolling.
Yeah, for sure. I think in the modern era with the game getting more and more physical, I think it's just not even a question. Nobody even questions it now. Would you have been better off to keep playing? Every team will take that bye without question. And I think, again, does that make fresher legs in the Penrith forward pack? Again, it is a very even contest when you take Kickout out. I look at Liam Martin, a tackle breaking outside or back rower. But Jaden Sewer is the Bunnies' answer, and he's an aggressive tackler as well. Look, is it just me, or has Cam Murray not been the superstar that I thought he could be this year? Even though the Bunnies have had good form and he's had good stats recently, I think Isaiah Yeo has been every bit as good as a lock and even a smoky to be in the Origin selection. You look at the front rows, like Totola and Tom Burgess, I can't take anything away from those guys, but it's like they're going up against Tarmow and the Vicious Fish. So it's close, but I just think the freshness tips the scales. Again, I'm going to give forward edge to the Panthers.
The Vicious Fish has honestly been the best out of those 4 guys that you just mentioned. He's been awesome this year for the Panthers. And look, people came into the preseason, saying that this Panthers side may have the best forward pack in the comp. They've kept everyone relatively fresh and healthy. So I totally agree. I give the slight edge to the Panthers in the forwards. But like you said, Cam Murray hasn't been quite as good. But Jaden Sewer, I know they missed him for that Roosters game, I believe, where they won by 52 points. So he's nice and fresh pretty much for this one, and he's arguably one of their better
Although he tweaked a knee last week, but they're saying he's right to go.
And Totola's actually been deemed decent, but I do agree with you, Jacob, that I give the slight edge to the Panthers in the forwards. Now, I guess I'll talk about halves or spine or whatever you want to do, but it's fucking close. It's whisker close if we're just talking about the halves here. Cleary and Luai have been the best halves in the competition right the way through for, pretty much the 18 rounds after Cleary came back in week 2. I know, they were separated for a little bit in there, but Cleary and Luai have been awesome this year. Luai has gone to another level, but wowee, Reynolds and Cody Walker, they are definitely the form halves of the finals. They are peaking at exactly the right time. We kind of said this, when there was about 8 to 10 weeks left, we said, if these guys start to click, this Rabbit side could be awesome. And Reynolds and Cody Walker, they just need to stay healthy. They've been able to do that. So I think that the halves are arguably a wash. If Cleary and Luai come out like they have been playing all season long, but Reynolds and Cody Walker come out like they've been playing the back end of the season, they're the form halves. And in terms of hooker, Coruscant has been the best pickup of the year. I don't think that's hard to argue for this Panthers side. He really adds another dimension to the attack. But on the other side, you've got a rep-level player in Damien Cook that hasn't had necessarily the best season that he's ever had. Definitely not the best season that he's ever had. But, he's got the experience. He's got the big game experience there and all that kind of stuff. So the one thing that they have the big edge is at fullback, I think. I've said all season long that I think Dylan Edwards is one of the most underrated fullbacks in the comp. And you've got Corey Allen back there, who's been, filling in nicely. Hasn't been making some dumb mistakes like Latrell has, but hasn't been able to add that spark that Latrell could sometimes. So, slight edge to the Panthers in the spine as well, I guess. Is that how you see it?
Yes, and Wayne Bennett said that he thought Damien Cook's best performance of the season was week 1 against the Knights, and then he was better last week against the Eels. So he's coming into form at the right time. Probably another player worth mentioning. He's showed up on the injury report as well, but he should be good to go. Look, I look at number 1, 6, 7, 9 of these teams. I got nothing negative to say about any of them. These players in the spines of both these sides are a huge reason why they're playing this weekend. They've been fantastic, and you can debate every position. I do think it's the edge to Edwards over Allen because he's the more experienced, but Allen's played really well and done a great job. And I would say, Latrell Mitchell is the better player, the more talented player, and raises the ceiling of the Rabbitohs, but also Latrell's worst game is probably worse than his consistency is not always there. So I still think it's a shame that we don't get to see Latrell, because it would mean the ceiling of this Bunnies would be even higher. But never mind that. We've got some great players in the halves, obviously. Like, Walker's been absolutely electric. But Jerome Luai, I think 22 tries this year.
Ridiculous.
And has a run game as well. Now, the left side attack won't be as potent without kick out there. It's worth mentioning. But I have to swing the advantage in the halves to Penrith, because they have Nathan Cleary, who I think has been the best player in the 2020 season. But it's not by much, because Adam Reynolds can command a game and control it with his kicking as well. And they're both dead-eye goal kickers too, but I still give a slight edge in the halves and in the spine to Penrith. Now, outside backs, well. I'll just carry on.
Yep.
Again, it's really close. Like,
I agree.
It's kind of like Raiders Storm. A guy that jumps out for me for Penrith is obviously Stephen Crichton. He just has superstar written all over him. But what about, Alex Johnston is in career best form, on fire, salvaged his career, like in terms of staying at the Bunnies is what he wanted to do. They reckon they couldn't fit him in. Now they certainly will move heaven and earth to keep him. But Campbell Graham doesn't get a lot of raps, a weapon of an outside back. I don't see really many flaws. You would have said the inexperience of Jackson Polo. Then he went and had his best game last week. But again, I just probably have to
confidence, man.
I give the slightest edge to Penrith outside backs, but you can feel free to disagree. Because I think the superstar factor with Crichton, I really think he's that special.
Oh, he is, and I agree. I have, and it seems funny to me that, not to me, but it seems funny that I would like the Rabbits in this spot when I give the edge to the Panthers in the forwards, in the spine, and in the outside backs. But it's an ever so slight edge, like you said. You've got some superstars. Obviously, Stephen Crichton is a superstar. Tall got injured for a little while there. I think he is the better winger out there. I'd rather have him on the wing. I think that Naden, you can have him at centre, and Naden's been doing a job. I still think Mansour's sort of over the hill, but honestly, he's been playing good down the back end of the stretch. I thought he was washed for a little bit there, but he still gets involved. I remember, a few years back, he was taking every hit up early in the set and making 10 metres. His body doesn't let him quite do that anymore, but he doesn't make dumb mistakes. But you're right, Alex Johnson, career best form. Campbell Graham, a little bit underrated. Gagai he's over the hill, but he's still solid there. And Jackson Paulo is improving week to week. I know, when he first came in, he was dropping a bunch of tries and people were hating on him, but maybe he just needed a little bit of confidence going into that one. So yes, I do give the slight edge to the Panthers in the outside backs as well. So I give them the ever so slightest edge in all three categories pretty much. But once again, if we're going to say that home field is a wash, I just don't think that adds up enough to be able to help me lay a whole converted try with the Panthers in this one.
Yeah, I get that. I look at the bench, the Bunnies bench, Nichols, Knight, Kolomatangi, they don't drop off when those guys enter the fray. And the Panthers bench is weaker this week because Capewell has to shift into the starting lineup to cover kick-out. But Moses Leota, maybe the best interchange player in the competition this year. But I think that's pretty even. And coach, I already shouted him out. I give the edge to the mastermind Bennett. I think it's an advantage to Bennett that he gets to play the underdog card. All the pressure is on Ivan. Ivan's done an incredible job this year. Ivan has made one grand final before 2011 when he got the Warriors there, but still inexperienced where Bennett's won the comp 7 times, And Ivan is thinking, how do I not lose this match?
Right.
Whereas Bennett is plotting a way to win it. He will come in with a game plan that gives the Bunnies a chance to win. I'm talking about a more expansive game and offloading and trying to vary the game up a bit. He has his team believing. The Bunnies is the first team ever in NRL history to win back-to-back finals games when trailing by double digits. And that when they were down double digits, they didn't blink to the Knights or the Eels. But hey, the Panthers didn't blink when they were down 10-0 to the Roosters either. Right. I think there's something really special in the belief. And I think if you're picking the Bunnies, you're going to talk about all the strengths that they have and how well they've played. I think the Panthers have the tools to deal with the Rabbitohs' strength. And you haven't mentioned it in this pod, and it doesn't really help your argument, but you've mentioned it many times this year. An underrated element of this Panthers team is not their attack, not their point scoring, but it's their defense. They're so connected. They are so athletic. And I think that they can slow down the Bunnies like the previous sides have not been able to. I also don't like laying the points. You figure usually at least one of the 2 prelims is going to be a nail biter, so you shouldn't go worse than 1-1 on these 1-1 on these side bets. Right. But I kind of feel like even if this game is close for 65 minutes, Panthers can break it open late. We've seen that before. And I can't see the Bunnies blowing the Panthers away before that stage. So I would lay the 6 again with Penrith. And I think we get a Penrith-Melbourne grand final, which could be one for the ages.
That would be an epic one, and you're absolutely right. Like, that's the blueprint for the Panthers. They know they're favourites in this one, and I think, that obviously they've been one of the most consistent teams down the stretch, 15 in a row, but, a big part of that was, like you said, the forwards doing the work, making, 10 to 20 more metres every set than they were giving up in defence, and that's the blueprint, not making mistakes here. Let Cleary's in-game kicking do the work for them, get repeat sets, have good field position. That's, I think, the blueprint for this Panthers side, where also I do think, you're right, it's the exact opposite for this Rabbit side. They've got to play some expensive footy, and why wouldn't they? The last 3 weeks, like you said, put up nearly 150 points. You're not going to change from that blueprint here, and I think, it's probably wrong to get into the grindhouse with a Panthers side that, has the better forwards and the better in-game kicker, arguably, I don't think even arguably, better in-game kicker in Cleary than Adam Reynolds. So I think the blueprint for the Rabbits is to spread it out, take some chances in this one. And I think, if it turns into a shootout, you've got some playmakers on that Rabbit side that I think can score enough tries to hang with this Panthers lineup.
So have you put our side bets up on the screen?
I'm going to put it up on the screen right now.
You can read them out.
We're putting another $500 on this one. Jacob's taking the Panthers -6. I'm taking the Rabbits +6 points. Let us know in the comments who's going to win that one. If you agree with me, you can even get a better line on Ladbrokes and on Neds. You can get 6.5 for $2. So
that's right, and you can even hunt around and get -5.5 on Sportsbet and the other if you like Penrith. So just to recap, I took the Storm -6. You've got Raiders +6. That's correct. $500 side bet.
Yep.
If it lands 6, it's a push.
Yep.
And then you've got the underdogs in both cases. You've just read out the Bunnies plays there, but you've got +6 with the Bunnies. But in both games, you also are risking 200 to win 400. Correct. I win 200 if the favourite gets up. You win 400 if the underdog gets up. That's the equivalent of me getting $1.50. You're getting $3.
Correct.
If you look at pretty much any bookie, you'll find be hard to get $1.50 on the favourites, and I don't think any bookies are offering $3. So when we bet each other, there's no rip-off. There's no what we call the VIG where they take their edge. Now, can I just ask you, though, you've heard my case for both sides, and you've made yours, and people can decide who they agree with. Do you feel more confident in one or the other if you had to just be on one, either Raiders or Bunnies?
I do, and it's ever so slight, but I actually do feel more confident in this Bunny side. Because it's a funny in terms of the Bunnies or the Raiders. Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah, like if you could, in terms of getting +6 or the outright up, if you could just have these side bets against me exist just for one game and not the other,
it would be the Bunnies.
You're more confident in the Saturday game.
Correct. Yes.
Funny because I'm more confident in the Saturday game too. I've got my doubts. Like with Melbourne, I'm starting to think I hope Munster doesn't get ruled out and stuff. But when you bet, you live with the results. But that's interesting. Well, I think I was going to say let's up the ante even more for the Saturday game, but we'll see how we go. But
probably enough.
Guys, you can see who you agree with, and just because we have these side bets, as I said, it doesn't mean that we think that confidently it's a best bet. These games might be truly 50-50. Usually finals games are scrutinized more highly and the odds are more correct. Or maybe one of us is on a 54% winner and the other is on 46. But at the end of the day, that ain't going to get it done in this historical season. So in any sense, I hope that you guys enjoyed this pod in the sense that we broke down every matchup that we saw and every key factor and went pretty in depth since we had only 2 games to get into. And now just look forward to watching them.
And I know, sorry guys, no best bets in this pod, but maybe, just maybe listening to us, you've thought, oh shit, if they disagree on both sides here, maybe it'll just be enough to keep you off a silly bet or a losing bet for this weekend. And honestly, these are going to be cracker games. There's no need to have to put a bet on either of these games to enjoy it. If anything, these are the games of the season that you can not bet on and still enjoy. Now, maybe I'm sounding crazy, but anyway, look, thanks once again for tuning in, guys. That'll wrap it for the preliminary finals preview. We'll be back on Sunday to break down what was, and we'll also see you guys on Saturday morning at 11 o'clock on the Tripod page and on the Tripod YouTube channel to break down round 6 of the NFL. So if you're interested in that, make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube and check the Tripod Facebook page. And as always, guys, gamble responsibly. Catch you soon.
Lego.